The year is 1191, and Christendom is dying. Jerusalem has fallen. The holy places are lost. Christian pilgrims are being dragged from churches, ransomed, enslaved, or killed. The great Crusader kingdom, once the pride of Europe, has been shattered into a handful of starving fortresses clinging to the coast. And now Saladin comes to finish the job. The Sultan of a united Islamic empire marches west with an army so vast that messengers describe it as a moving continent. Tens of thousands of elite riders, veterans of 100 victories, marching with one purpose: to erase the cross from the East forever. The monasteries send letters begging for help. The Patriarch cries out to Europe. The remaining lords beg for aid from France, from Germany, from Rome. No one comes. Europe is divided. Kings argue over thrones. Armies refuse to cross the Alps. In less than a month, every Crusader state will fall. Saladin knows it. The world knows it. But then across the continent, beyond mountains and rival kingdoms, a king hears the call. A king who does not bow to fear or distance or politics. A king whose very name terrifies his enemies. Richard I of England, the Lionheart. He gathers warriors from across Europe: Normans, Englishmen, Flemish knights, Templars, Hospitallers, an army of men who refuse to watch Christendom burn. Yet when Richard lands in the Holy Land, he finds the truth. He is too late. Jerusalem is gone. The Christian armies are broken, and Saladin commands a force 4 times larger than anything Europe can field. The surviving Crusaders look at Richard and see not a savior, but a king marching towards suicide. Saladin laughs. His generals laugh louder. What can 7,000 men do against 30,000 of the finest warriors of the East? Everyone believes the same thing. Richard has come to die. But then the Lionheart marches anyway, and step by step, mile by mile, under a burning sun and beneath the shadow of Saladin's army, he prepares to do the impossible. Richard lands, and the march begins. The coast of Palestine burns under a sun that kills without mercy. Richard leads 7,000 souls south from Acre toward Jaffa. 7,000 against 30,000. A column stretched thin along the Mediterranean shore, one flank pressed to the sea, the other exposed to an enemy that outnumbers them 4 to 1. And Saladin's army is always there, just beyond sight. Thousands of riders circling like carrion birds, banners rippling in the heat haze, dust and steel shimmering in the distance. If this column breaks, the coastal cities will fall, the pilgrim roads will close forever. Everything the First Crusade bled to achieve will vanish. The men remember Hattin, how 4 years earlier Saladin destroyed a Crusader host, 20,000 dead or enslaved in a single afternoon. Now they march that same killing ground, and they see history preparing to repeat itself. But Richard does not panic. He marches with iron in his spine and control over his fear. He knows discipline is deadlier than numbers, that the army that holds its nerve decides the field. The march becomes an ordeal. Armor trapping heat, shields dragging at their arms, throats burn dry. The wounded ride in the center, crossbowmen guard the flanks, knights wait in reserve, every movement controlled. Richard rides the line endlessly, his voice pounding through exhaustion. Hold formation, hold discipline, do not break ranks. The attacks never stop. Horse archers sweep in from the flanks, arrows hissing, punching through mail, dropping men in the dust. The column keeps marching, stepping over the fallen. A young knight loses his nerve and charges forward. Richard's voice explodes. "Hold your position!" The knight freezes, trembling, and falls back into line. It happens again and again, and every time Richard holds them firm, the discipline tightening like forged steel. Slowly, the Crusaders understand. Richard is not trying to fight 30,000 men. He is forcing Saladin to fight on his terms, at his moment. But the cost is paid in blood and endurance. Somewhere in the grinding column, two Templars ride side by side. Gerard, scarred veteran of a dozen campaigns. Thomas, barely 20 on his first. "They outnumber us 5-1, Thomas says. Gerard doesn't look away from the dust clouds. "Then we kill 5 each." An arrow cracks against Thomas's shield. He stares at it. "That was meant for my throat." Gerard snaps it in half. "It missed. Keep marching." The heat fells men as quickly as arrows. Bodies collapse, dragged to the wagons, but Richard will not stop. Stopping means dying. Only reaching Jaffa brings safety, and even that is uncertain. That night they camp with the sea at their backs. No fires, no voices, only men collapsed where they stood. Thomas sharpens his sword with shaking hands. "Do you think we will survive this?" Gerard tests the blade. "Probably not." "Then why march?" "Because if we break, Europe loses its last foothold in the Holy Land." By the 5th day, they are beyond fear, beyond exhaustion. Their world has shrunk to heat, dust, and the next step. Death rides just out of arrow range, patient as stone. And then Saladin springs his trap. The land opens into a broad plain near a forest on one side, sea on the other. Open ground between, perfect cavalry country, perfect killing ground. Saladin has been waiting for this moment since the march began. His entire army sweeps forward, not tax now, full assault. 30,000 men rushing in like a sandstorm made of steel and old hatred. The drums begin, a sound that shakes the earth and rattles teeth. The war cries rise, a roar that drowns thought itself, that turns bowels to water. The Crusaders see what is coming, and their hearts turn to ice in their chests. This is Hattin. This is the end. This is how Christendom dies on a nameless plain under a merciless sun. Richard rides to the front of the column. His voice somehow carries over the drums and the roaring and the sound of 30,000 hooves. "Form defensive block. Infantry to the outside. Crossbows ready. Knights to the center." The Crusaders obey with the precision of machines built for war. Years of training overriding raw panic. They form a tight defensive block. Crossbowmen on the outer edges kneeling behind shields. Infantry with spears forming a wall of Christendom steel. Knights dismounted in the center, waiting like caged lightning. The Eastern cavalry crashes against them like waves against a cliff in a storm. Thousands of horsemen swirling around the formation in dust clouds that blot out the sun. Arrows darken the sky until noon becomes twilight. The crossbowmen fire in disciplined volleys, reload with shaking hands, fire again. Bodies begin piling at the edge of the formation. Horses scream, men scream, but they keep coming. The drums never stop, never falter. The pressure mounts from all sides until it feels like the world itself is crushing inward. Men scream prayers, horses scream in pain. The wounded cry for water they will never receive, for mercy that will not come, for death to end it. And through it all, Richard holds them. Do not break formation. Hold the line. Any man who charges without my command will hang if he survives. The Hospitallers are positioned at the rear of the formation, elite knights who have fought the East for 20 years. They take the heaviest pressure. Waves of Mamluk cavalry hammering at their section of the block, trying to find weakness, trying to create the single break that will collapse everything. The Hospitaller Grand Master rides to Richard, his armor dented, his face gray with exhaustion. "My king, we cannot hold much longer. If we do not charge, we will be ground to dust." Richard's eyes never leave the battlefield. Hold yet one more hour.
Swirling battlefield. Not yet, my lord. Our men are dying. Richard's voice is iron forged in fire. So are theirs. Hold. The Hospitallers return to their positions, bleeding, raging, held only by discipline and the king's unbreakable will. The minutes stretch into hours. The hours feel like lifetimes. Then, finally, it happens. Not from cowardice, from desperation beyond bearing. They cannot stand the slaughter any longer. 10 knights spur their horses and charge into the eastern lines. The dam breaks. More knights follow, then more. The entire Hospitaller force surges forward into the enemy cavalry. The formation begins to dissolve at its edges. For a single heartbeat, Richard sees everything he has built for 5 days unraveling before his eyes. Then he makes his choice. He does not punish the breach, he turns it into salvation. His voice roars across the battlefield like thunder itself. "Charge, all knights, now, for Dodd and England and Christendom!" 3,000 Crusader knights explode from the defensive block. The greatest heavy cavalry in Europe, held back for days, compressed like a spring, now unleashed in a single devastating blow. They are fresh, they are furious, and they strike like the wrath of heaven made flesh. The Templars charge at the center. Gerard and Thomas ride side by side. The lance feels like lightning in Gerard's scarred grip. The world narrows to thunder and steel, and the faces of the enemy rushing toward them. The impact is apocalyptic. Crusader lances punch through the lighter Eastern cavalry like God's own judgment. Riders are lifted right out of saddles and hurled to earth. Horses go down screaming, legs shattered. The momentum is unstoppable. Chroniclers will later whisper that the earth itself trembled when Richard's charge struck home. Exaggeration, perhaps, but those who were there never forgot the sound. The thunder of 3,000 armored riders descending like an avalanche of steel. The Mamluks try to wheel away, too late. The Crusaders are among them, swords flashing in the sun like captured starlight. Every blow landing with the full weight of armored men on armored horses moving at full gallop. Thomas loses his lance in the first seconds. It splinters in a Mamluk's chest. He draws his sword, swings wildly, feels the blade bite flesh again. He is screaming words he does not know. He does not know when he started, or if he can stop. Beside him, a Hospitaller's horse goes down. The knight rolls clear, comes up fighting on foot, swings his mace in brutal arcs, holds his ground for 10 heartbeats before the cavalry tide swallows him and moves on. Gerard fights with mechanical precision born of decades, every strike purposeful, every movement practiced 10,000 times until it became instinct. He does not think, does not feel, just kills, because that is what he was forged to do, because that is what Europe needs. Richard rides at the heart of the charge. His blade never stops moving, never slows. He is everywhere at once, a blur of red and gold, an unstoppable fury. Later, chroniclers will claim he fought like an angel of death given flesh, that his sword moved faster than human eyes could follow, that men fell before him like wheat before a scythe, that he killed 100 men with his own hand that afternoon. Some of it is exaggeration, legend building on trauma, but only some. Those who fought beside him swore they saw things no mortal should accomplish. The eastern lines buckle, then crack,
then shatter entirely. Panic spreads through Saladin's cavalry faster than any blade. Units that held steady for days turn and flee in wild disorder. The formation dissolves into chaos, thousands of riders streaming away in all directions. Saladin watches from a rise with his personal guard. He sees his army breaking apart before his eyes. He sees the impossible becoming real, 7,000 breaking 30,000. Europe's desperate last stand becoming a rout. He does not panic, does not rage. He withdraws, pulls back his personal guard while he still can. He sounds the retreat before disaster becomes annihilation. Because Saladin is a survivor, a strategist, he will regroup, rebuild, fight another day. But today belongs to the English king. Today belongs to Christendom. Victory, aftermath, and legacy. By afternoon, the battlefield is a graveyard stretching to the horizon. Thousands of Saladin's men lie dead or dying in the merciless sun. The Crusaders have lost hundreds, but they have won. The column is intact, the march can continue. Jaffa is saved. Thomas rides back to the formation. His armor is dented and scorched. His sword is nicked and covered in blood he cannot remember spilling. His hands shake so badly he can barely hold the reins. Gerard finds him, claps a hand on his shoulder. You lived. Thomas looks at him with eyes that have aged a decade in a single afternoon. I killed men today, so many men. Gerard nods once. You did, and you will kill more before this crusade ends. That is the price we pay for keeping the faith alive in this land. Thomas is silent, staring at his bloody hands. Then he nods slowly, sheathes his sword, and rejoins the formation, because the march is not over. It will never truly be over. Richard rides through his men that evening, exhausted, wounded, but victorious. They look at him with something beyond respect, beyond loyalty. They look at him like he is half mortal, half myth, because he did what no Crusader king had done in a generation. He beat Saladin in open battle. He held discipline when panic should have destroyed them. He struck at the perfect moment with perfect fury. The word spreads across the Levant like wildfire through dry grass. Richard Lionheart shattered Saladin in Arsuf. The Eastern army that seemed unstoppable bled and broke. The tide of war has turned. Saladin returns to Jerusalem. He will not risk another open battle with Richard, not after Arsuf. The Lionheart will campaign for another year. He will come within sight of Jerusalem's walls and weep at what he cannot reclaim. He will negotiate a peace that allows Christian pilgrims to return safely to the holy places. He will never take the city, but he will save the Crusader states from annihilation. He will give them another century of life. He will keep the flame of Christian presence burning in the East when all reason said it should be extinguished, all because of one afternoon at Arsuf. Centuries later, when military minds study impossible victories snatched from certain defeat, they study Arsuf. When commanders face overwhelming odds, they remember Richard, the king who understood that battles are won in the mind before they are won with the sword. At Arsuf, Europe held the line when the line should have broken. The Crusader states survived when survival seemed impossible. Winged victory in the dust, where 7,000 held back 30,000, and impossible became inevitable. This was Europa Rise, where the past still rides.